So after the Battle of Philippi, we need to start setting up for a distress call. You'll notice that the recruits and money rewards have been increased from the base game, so you have a little bit more to work with. The downside of the recruits going up is that it is much harder to clear out your entire recruit pool to reset units into something more favorable. Which in some ways is probably a good thing, because otherwise I would turn this unit into probably like 2 artillery units and either maybe a cavalry unit or a skirmisher unit that are all 2 stars, and that would be a little ridiculous. One thing you can try, and I'm not going to use this because I'm just not in good enough shape for it, and I had some bad RNG in terms of officers, is so if scales is a little higher, what you can do is you can take these rifles, take the officer, and that leaves you with around 6,000 rifles. So you could create a second division, set up 3 infantry units all at 2,000 men apiece, and then you'd set up those 6,000 men, leaving you with only 3,800 in here, at which point you disband Woods and Scales, because their stats are pretty good, specifically in Woods' case. They have a pretty good melee stat, which you just don't need in artillery. So you would disband both of those to increase the average recruit stats. You'd probably be up around 20 for most of the stats and around 24 for firearms. At which point you turn those 2 units back into either artillery or cavalry, and if you put a high-level colonel in there, like Gibbon and probably Walton, you might need to buy an officer to do it though. Then you would be able to get 1-star units right off the bat with that setup. So part of that setup also requires either not losing, I think it was Wagner was the division officer who got wounded. You need to not lose that officer, and you need more colonels to spawn. Like in this case, I got a brigadier general and a colonel, and then a bunch of lieutenant colonels and majors. Which this is actually pretty good in terms of leveling up officers, but only having 1 colonel means that it would be pretty hard to try and start off with all 1-star units. The other thing, if you're going to try and, it is possible to have enough. If you keep Scales alive, disband both of those and get a little bit another colonel in there. What you can actually get 8 units that are all 1-star if you get lucky with the number of officers in there. It's expensive, but you can do it, and it puts you in a pretty good spot for the next battle. If you were going to do that, you would probably want to have gone with only 1 point in logistics and gone with the 4 points in training, as that would have gotten you that much closer to that to the cutoff point where you can drop those high-level colonels in there and get 1-star units out of it. So in my case, that isn't going to work, but that is a strategy I've used in the past, and I just wanted to go over it with it because it is an option. The other thing worth mentioning is, so I miscalculated slightly on logistics and then also learned something new on top of it. So what I had forgotten is that while having 2 points, oh right, that's the next level. I was able to update these tooltips. I wasn't able to update this area. This area, just the way it's configured in the game, I can't add to it. But so 2 points in logistics means that we're at a 1 multiplier for normal weapons in the shop, and we're at half that for the artillery weapons. So the mistake I made was that normally you get 3 of these, you get 2 of these in the base game. So when you half that, you get 1, you get 1. And now here's where things get interesting. The base game, you get 3 of these, both of these, but clearly, when we divide that in half, we get 1 and 2. So what that actually means is that the numbers behind the scenes aren't actually whole numbers. So the 24-pound howitzer must be something like 3.7, some number that's going to round up. When you divide it in half, you get to 2, and this must be slightly lower than that. If I'm remembering right, in the base game, after Bull Run, you get 3 or 4 of these. You get like 8 of the howitzers. So that's probably what's going on there. You probably have some intermediate number that's getting pulled based on a timeline scale. So the end result is the stuff I did with logistics is going to get me some extra 24-pounders. I think it's going to net me some extra James, but I'm not going to be able to get Whitworth's or siege guns fielded at Shiloh. One thing I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. I have to spend this point in AO here, but going into Bull Run, I could spend a 3rd point in logistics, which I have tested, and that would be enough to get me enough parrots after Bull Run that I could field 20-pound parrots at Shiloh. The trade-off is that means that I wouldn't have enough AO to go up to 10 brigades, so I'd be 4 brigades short at Bull Run. I don't think I need those extra 4 brigades to win Bull Run, but I'm not sure if the trade-off in officer and unit XP is worth the cost of getting that extra artillery unit on the field, as good as the 20-pounders are. So I'll have to think about that one some more and decide if I'm going to do it. So for now, we're going to put the point in AO because we don't want to try and win Distress Call with 4 units. That would end poorly. Let's take a look at the numbers real quick. So that's actually pretty good. We haven't touched a thing. And this is about as low as I've seen that number. I mean, it's hard to tell in the mod because the variance always changes it a little bit, but from what I remember, I usually end up going into this battle facing somewhere between 10 to 12,000, and that number starts a little lower, so I think this is actually going to be fairly easy. Okay, so yes, first of all, we'll look over the general perks. We've got accuracy, charge damage, and speed. I'm going to go with accuracy because I don't really need speed. I don't want the charge damage. Again, this is all planning around having to face oversized units at Shiloh, and meleeing those units tends to go very badly because my units are all going to be small. So I'd rather stack as much accuracy as I can to get as much range damage as I can, degrade those units, and deal with them that way. As I mentioned, sometimes you can disband. I'm not thrilled with this perk, but I don't have a reasonable way. Like, if I disband this unit, I'm going to end up with stats that are all right around this range, and I would rather just have a unit that's much closer to get 2 stars. If I can push this unit along far enough to make it there, then we'll just take the accuracy perk at rank 2. Which isn't my preferred way to do it, but it'll be good enough. Okay. So first off, I'm going to take the officer. The reason for this is an officer of that rank is almost probably $15,000. So this isn't a great money ratio in terms of spending reputation. But good officers are invaluable at the stage of the campaign, so I'm actually going to take that. I'm going to put him in command of this brigade, and then we're going to move him up into division command, and that basically solves our problem of command for all of these units. I'm just going to grab I think that's the cheapest. Yeah, we're just going to grab the cheapest lieutenant colonel for these units. Because of this setup, and because I didn't go training, I'm not going to be able to get these units to 1 star. I could get 1 unit if I bought this general, but I don't want to spend the money on it at this point. I don't think it's quite necessary, and I would rather train up the officers instead. Okay. The other option, what I could do, like I would, if I did not have a perk the perk I wanted on the artillery, I would probably still disband this unit and drop it down to 8. 12 guns is more than I really like going in this early in the campaign, but we're so close to 2-star. Like if we disbanded it, we'd drop down to like this range. So we're close enough that I'm going to leave them here and see how far we can get this unit. The one thing I am going to do is I'm going to replace the Napoleon with the 6-pounder. So if you compare the stats on these weapons, Napoleon just has a pretty bad curve. In the base game, it was designed around being range 1400, which is much longer than a lot of the smooth bores. So you got the like short range would extend out to like medium range, and the weapon was all right. But if you're just comparing the curve, the 6-pounder curve wins in every regard. And because these weapons have the same range in the mod, that curve is going to be more effective. And if you compare the other stats, the 6-pounder just wins in every single category. Fire rate, ammunition, ammo cost. I guess it loses out a little bit on collateral radius, but that's not too big a deal. Mostly it'll do more damage faster than the Napoleon. So at the moment, Napoleon, just a worse version of the 6-pounder. That's something we'll want to fix in the next version, but it's one of those things that we thought the curves, we looked at, you look at the curve in a graph and you're like, oh, okay, it's about like this. So if we give it these stats, it'll work out. But then later on when I changed the tooltip so you could actually see them much easier, you compare the two and you're like, oh, wait, this didn't quite work how we thought. So definitely need some changes here. The other thing worth noting around that is the Napoleon is a medium cannon and the 6-pounder is a light cannon, so the 6-pounder is going to move faster in the mod. And then there's a couple heavy cannon, which I think are just the Siege, the 20-pounder, and I can't quite remember. I don't remember the full classifications. I'm pretty sure I've listed them in the mod thread, though. So anyways, long story short, we're going to replace the Napoleons with 6-pounders. Then we're going to get the cavalry set up. I'm going to give them lieutenant colonels, which isn't going to be sufficient to completely take care of the command efficiency ratio, but it'll be good enough. This is going to be expensive because we got to basically buy all these weapons, but make use of all this extra money that we have. And the reason I start with 2 of these is cavalry are, early on when you don't have a lot of firepower, cavalry are incredibly effective at cleaning up routing units. So I'm going to use these to kill off the enemy artillery and then try and isolate individual infantry units and kill as many as I can while they're routing. If you try and do that with infantry, the infantry just aren't fast enough. Well, maybe they are if you take the melee perks, but I want maybe this unit could, but I want the other stuff. This is definitely a strategy that works better if you are able to disband these and get these units and have the training and are able to get these to 1-star, because then you can get the perk that makes these units even faster. Without that perk, these units are going to be fairly vulnerable to the AI cavalry, but I think I can still make it work. And then for my last 2 units, I did select that right. I'm going to be setting up 2 oversized skirmisher units. I'm going to put majors in control of them, which again is not going to cover the efficiency rating, but I don't really care. For normal units, I care. For these type of units, this is almost certainly going to get disbanded after this battle, but it's an opportunity to get my recruit stats up a little bit, and it will help me rank up this officer, and these are basically going to be countercharge units. The reboard musket doesn't have the... I guess the melee is alright for what else is available at this area. It'd be much better to have muskets, but I definitely don't want to pay for them. So these weapons that I captured will do. And if this is your first time seeing it, yes, in the mod you can equip infantry weapons to skirmishers. That's to help make up for the lack of having detached skirmishers in the mod. And later on, I'll be creating, detached skirmisher-sized units of skirmishers and giving them infantry weapons and using them that way. But for this battle, we're going to specifically do this. Part of the reason we can get away with this is there are no skirmisher units on the AI side in this battle, which means none of this triggers scaling at all. If I were to turn these into infantry, we'd be facing an extra 2,000 men probably. So if we just take a look at what scaling looks like now, we've gone up 800 men or so. So we're outnumbered by barely 1,000. These units are probably all going to be 1 or 2 stars. There's probably a couple of 3 stars. So that won't be great, but we're going to be in pretty good shape going into this. It's also worth noting it might be worth, especially if you disband both of these units and then create new ones, I would probably not create an extra infantry unit. I'd probably create a second artillery unit. But in this case, since Scales actually has the perk I want, and Loomis doesn't, I guess I could create another artillery unit here, but I kind of want to get the... I don't know. I'm debating this because I like having the extra artillery unit, because that means I'm going to be in better shape for later battles in terms of getting those perked up sooner. But I think I want to go with I think I'm going to stick with the infantry. And with what we've spent, we just dump the rest into supply. Actually, I guess we want a little bit out because we can probably top these units off just to get some nice round numbers. So I'm going to put veterans in here. It doesn't cost all that much. And, it's not a huge amount of stats, but the stat with the XP gain being slowed down in the mod, those stats are pretty important. And unlike the base game where the third perk is basically useless, the third level perks are extremely good in the mod. So if we can get 3-star units, we definitely want them. So just going to boost him up. Same here, and I'm going for an overall unit size of about 1,000, so I'm actually not going to boost Scales up. I'm going to leave him as is. The one other thing I'm going to do, actually, so I was debating switching out for the Harper's Ferry 1841, just because it's a much better weapon than the Springfield 1855. But since this unit doesn't have the accuracy, I think I'm just going to leave it with the 1855. It's slightly worse for melee, but whatever. Has a slightly higher fire rate, so we'll just let the firearm stat go up faster, and hopefully we can get this unit close to 2 stars in the next couple of battles. Okay, so this is way more supply than you really need. I've gone in with like 5,000 or 6,000. It gets a little tight, but if you capture the enemy supply, it's not too bad. But I think in this case, I'm going to stick with this. This will help carry over to the next battle, and having more supply will help as this battle tends to drag out anyways. And if we don't have to use the enemy supply, then that's just more money we get. So I think I'm going to keep this here rather than springing for the Brigadier General to try and get one of these units to a 2nd star. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. So I will be back with the battle.